Happy Wednesday, everyone. If you are new to following me or just don't know me that well, I want to first introduce myself. But my name is Kayla Slater. I am a registered dietitian, online nutrition coach, and run coach for plant-based runners and endurance athletes. So today, my topic is on discussing how you know and make sure that you are getting the nutrients you need as a plant-based endurance athlete. So this I feel like is an important topic because you may be somebody that's been plant-based for a while and may not even know that you may not be getting certain nutrients, and it could be affecting your performance, right? Or you may not even realize that you are more focused on doing it for your health and not considering what you need as an athlete, more into the sports nutrition. So anyways, that is what I really want to focus on today. So if you are a runner, an endurance athlete, if you're someone that's plant-based, that's active, this will be a great video for you. So hopefully you will stay tuned if you are on. So thank you if you are joining live. Thank you if you are joining on the replay. If you could just comment below #replay, let me know that you did watch this video, or if it was helpful. That would be great too, to just get some feedback and know how these videos are serving you guys and if this is helpful. So if you are on live, let me know you're here so I know that you're on. Hey Ryan, I see Ryan's on. What's up? So, okay, so let's get into the topic, okay? So how do you know, first off, how do you even know the nutrients that you need to have? So I'm going to first talk about and focus on the nutrients that you need. So macronutrients, there's macronutrients, and then there's micronutrients. Oh, thanks. Ryan just thanked me for the nice shirt that I have. This is from the Utica Roadrunners. So this is our local running club shirt is what I have on. So yes, so there's macros and there's micronutrients, okay? So the macronutrients are where you get your calories from, okay? So those are going to be your carbohydrates, your protein, and your fats, right? Those are your macronutrients. And then there's your micronutrients. So your micronutrients are those nutrients you get through your diet that you need. Now I'm going to focus on a couple in this video. I'm going to focus on a couple of those micronutrients that you need as a runner or an endurance athlete. That's important for you, especially when you are plant-based, something that you may be low in and not even realize it or know that you are, kind of thing. So I want to focus on talking about that too. So all right, so macros. So the first thing, well, actually I want to back it up a little bit before I start talking about macros and micronutrients, calories. That is really your first step into figuring out calories you need. Now, I actually just did a presentation today, a class on talking about calories that you need. So I've heard a lot of information. Like I do use the energy balance a lot to explain this, but I've also heard there are nutrition professionals that don't exactly agree with the energy balance idea or way to explain things. So with calories, I really just want to focus on, for you as a someone that's really active, or an athlete or a runner, just want to stress to make sure that you understand what calories are, to make sure you are getting enough calories. So mostly all the time when we see when you work with this population, right, we're not getting enough calories, and that can impede your performance. So the first thing is really to make sure that you're eating enough calories. Now, does that mean that you have to start calorie tracking? No, it does not mean you have to start calorie tracking, but it's a good idea to try to learn to figure out, first step is figuring out how many calories you need, right? And this may not be as simple as you think, because as a runner, as an endurance athlete, it can vary from day to day. Your needs vary day to day based on your physical activity, right? So really is based on your workouts and your runs. So it may change. It may not be the same of what you need. And I really believe that really calorie needs for anyone really does change, because our lifestyles, I don't think, ever really stay the same. I know for me, even as a runner, there are times that I'm in marathon training, right? There's periods in my life where I'm in, big into training. And then there's periods in my life where, maybe I'm running, but not a lot. Or maybe like now I'm injured and barely even running, right? So my calorie needs are going to change based on all those areas, right? Based on all those times, where I am in my life, what season I'm in, right? So it may change based on that too. And as I said, calories can change based on your day-to-day, your workouts and your runs. So it may definitely change a little bit. But of course, just use, for this, of course, like, working somebody like what I do for runners is I do these calculations for you, and we figure out too, how much more calories do you need on heavier or longer run days, things like that. So those, I just want to say, that is, what I do when I work with clients, is to help you figure that out. And as I said, you don't necessarily need to track calories, but certainly trying to figure out a way that you can either estimate or figure out where you are. So even just like when I first start working with a client, the first thing I have them do is do a diary call. That is probably, the most accurate way to really figure out, right, where they are, how many calories on average are they doing. And you don't necessarily have to keep, tracking your calories, but of course that's going to be the most accurate, right? Of course that's going to be most accurate, but you don't have to do that. As long as I have a starting point that I can figure out how many calories you're eating, or even you can do this on your own and use an app. So what I would recommend is, there's MyFitnessPal, but I do recommend Chronometer. That is what I have my clients use. So it's very similar to MyFitnessPal, and they log everything in there. So they're pretty good at it. But it really, with tracking calories and tracking nutrients, I really kind of take that approach, whether it's right for the client that I'm working with. With a younger client, that may be more susceptible to falling into disordered eating patterns, I probably would take a more intuitive approach. So I don't know if most of you know what that really means, but that's really, really not being as accurate as possible, which of course, being as accurate as we possibly can is going to be helpful, but we don't always have to, right? We can, take a more approach as in, just seeing what they're eating, or even just getting a 3-day recall and just at least having that, and then working from there. So you don't always have to really track calories day to day, because it can get time consuming, it can get hard. And the same thing I want to say with macros, right? I know a lot of people that do track macros and that works for you, but again, as I said, I really do, when I work with clients, I really do based on the client. I do work out with it, or what we do is really dependent on the client that I'm working with and how, they feel about how, if it's really time consuming or not for them to really track those things. But really, I want to go back to really your first step before even considering whether you should track or not to track or what to use is really really first knowing what you need, right? First being calculating and knowing how many calories you need, knowing how many more calories you need, and then also your macros, right? So this is really going to be can be a little dependent, right, on you, but in general, there are guidelines for the macronutrients for runners. So you guys might know this already, but if anyone knows, let me know. How about I'll throw it out to you guys if anyone's on. So does anyone know the percent of total calories of how many carbohydrates you should eat? We'll see if anyone answers. Okay, that's okay. So carbohydrates, let's see if I know, 45 to 65, I believe. Yes, 45 to 65% of total calories. So it may be a little bit more than general person. Ryan says 75. That's actually a little high. Yeah, it doesn't have to be quite that high. But it's certainly higher because, higher than the general person, because you want to make sure that you are getting carbohydrates, because that is where your body uses that energy, right? The carbohydrates give your body energy in the form of glycogen, and that is what your muscles use to be able to run, right? So that's really important that you're making sure that you're eating enough carbohydrates. So that's really important. What I also want to talk about too is not just talking about, the estimate of how much of your calories you need, right? But these macronutrients, but also what types am I talking about, right? So when I say carbohydrates, what do you think of when I say carbohydrates? Like what kind of foods? What kind of foods do you think of when you think of carbohydrates? I have my LaCroix. I'm drinking. Nobody? Okay. So carbohydrates, I know most people when I talk about carbohydrates, they think bread. Bread. Pizza. Yes, pizza, right? Crust. But it doesn't have to be. You don't have to eat bread, right? If you're like, bread's just like too much, it's just like, I just can't eat that much carbohydrates, it's just that much bread. Maybe it's difficult to swallow, to chew, whatever that is, right? You can choose other sources, right, of carbohydrates. Like I love quinoa that I recommend a lot to my clients because that also has a protein. So you can count it actually as a carbohydrate and a protein exchange, which I think is absolutely awesome. 2 in 1, why not? So quinoa is a big one, or any grain, right? Like your brown rice. Those things, right, are also, like, don't forget about those sources. I also count sweet potatoes. So potatoes, I do a lot of sweet potatoes. I also count them as a carbohydrate source. Yes, they are a vegetable, but they're starchy vegetables, right? So I actually do count them as a carbohydrate exchange. So don't forget about those, right? Don't forget about your starchy vegetables. Don't forget about rice and quinoa and those type of grains for your carbohydrate source. So really what I'm mentioning is complex carbs. So as somebody that's plant-based, I'm really assuming that most of your carbohydrate sources are coming from complex sources. But if you are looking for quick energy right before you run, right, maybe, or during a run, maybe having simple carbs may be beneficial. So simple carbohydrates are like sugar, right? Pure sugar. And this can be sometimes hard for someone that may be plant-based and maybe more plant-based for their health. and may not really want to have sugar, right? So that can be a little bit difficult. And there's certainly, I know these, there's so many ultra marathoners out there now, and they're getting really clever and figuring out what works for them without actually taking pure sugar. But I also want to just say sometimes, with sports nutrition, with whole food plant-based, you may not always be able to be whole food plant-based or entirely eat whole food plant-based, right? Because it's important that you make sure that you are fueling during your runs, and sometimes you got to do what you have to do, right? And there's certainly tons of ideas out there, and other ultra runners and marathoners you could reach out to see what they do if they don't want sugar. But I do know too, like actually the clients that I'm working with right now, they didn't like the GUs at all, and they actually tried the chews. So they've been taking the chews. So, really just figure out what works for you, figure out what you like for simple carbs. But I just want to throw that out there. And then our next macronutrient that I want to talk about, right, is protein. Excuse me. So protein's really important too. Protein is going to be a little bit more, for a runner, right? For somebody that is an endurance athlete, it's going to be more than general. So generally, we would recommend for the general public, you would recommend 0.8 grams per kilogram, right? So it's based on kilograms would be your weight. So that would be protein, but you want a little bit more. And you're not really on the high end, right? Like 2 grams per kilogram would be high. That would be more like a bodybuilder. So we're really in the middle for endurance athletes. So 1.2 to 1.4, I would say, grams per kilogram is where you want to be, right in the middle there. And what are some plant-based sources of protein? Can anyone give me a plant-based source of protein? What are some plant-based sources that you guys like? That you get your protein. So beans is huge for me. I'm a big fan of chickpeas. I love, love, love chickpeas. I joke around all the time that I'm going to turn into a chickpea because I eat them so many different ways. So I eat hummus. I make chickpea wraps. I also bake chickpeas or roast chickpeas. I like them like that too. So I use so many chickpeas. It's crazy, but I don't know why those are my favorite beans. I try other beans. I have black beans a lot too, and I try to use other beans, but I don't know why, but I like chickpeas. But that's just what I prefer. Tofu, tempeh, of course, those are more soy-based products. Maybe not, something that you want to do. Maybe you don't want to do so much soy, and that's okay. But you want to make sure that you're still getting the protein that you need. So, I also want to throw in there protein shakes. Like, do you have to have a protein shake after a run? Well, no, not necessarily, but it could be a good option for you, right? Maybe like, say especially like after a race. After a race, I've found there's not always protein sources to have after a race. There's mostly carbohydrates, and for post-race, post-run, you want to replace glycogen stores. So you're going to mostly want carbohydrates, but you're going to want a little protein too. And I've always found, especially too being plant-based, it's really hard. And how are you going to be able to get that protein within 30 to 60 minutes, right? So say maybe there's a little protein, right, in chocolate milk. That's why chocolate milk's so popular, because it has that ratio of 4 to 1 grams of carbohydrate ratio to protein. So it's 4 grams to 1 gram protein. That's what makes it so great, right? But as someone that's plant-based or vegan, you might not do dairy, right? So you're not going to have chocolate milk. So maybe in that situation, bringing protein powder and mixing your own protein shake would be a good idea, right? So I don't want to say that you always have to have a protein shake, but it may work for you. You got to figure out, you want to figure out what works for you, right? The clients now that I have, actually they don't do their protein shake post run. They actually take their shake pre-run, and that's just what works for them. That fuels them, that gives them enough energy, and they take theirs too. So it's really, as I said, what works for you. And again, if you are truly whole food plant-based, you may think, I no way I'm going to do a shake. And that's something, again, you may reconsider, again, because it can be difficult, it can be possible, but it can be a little bit more difficult, right, to make sure you are getting that protein. But I do think day to day, it's possible to eat enough protein that's all plant-based. It may just have to have some soy sources like tofu and tempeh and those kind of things. So let's see where I'm at. So Ryan said avocados. Avocados are fats. They're considered a fat source. So not protein, but that is what I'm going to be talking about next. So that is our next macronutrient, right? Our fats. So fats are also important. I do believe it's a little bit more of total calories than general for an athlete, an endurance, or I should say endurance athlete, because fats are helpful. That's not very descriptive, or why it is. But fats are also good for energy, so it's also important to make sure you have enough fats to fuel for your runs. And as someone that's plant-based, you probably really are already going to have healthy fats, I'm sure, in your diet because you are plant-based. But those are like avocados, as Ryan said, chia and flax, I like to mention too, because they have omega-3s, omega-3 fatty acids, which are also important to make sure you're getting those omega-3s. And that is also something, omega-3s are also something I think we neglect also as being plant-based or as a runner, is making sure that we're getting those omega-3s, and that can be harder to be able to get. So definitely, chia and flax I think is a great source to get those omega-3s. Nuts are also a great run. The athletes I'm working with right now, the runner that I'm working with, they love nuts and trail mix, and they eat that a lot too, because like in the class that I taught today, I talked about also how nuts are healthy fats, but they are a high calorie content. Now with the athletes that I'm working with, right, it's okay for those calories because we're actually really trying to get them to eat more calories, because they are training for races. So it's really important that we make sure that they are getting enough calories, right? So really, that's really the first thing you really want to focus on is your calories and carbs, protein, fats, so those macronutrients. Make sure you're getting enough of all that. And you may not even know that you are not eating enough carbs or not eating enough protein, right? It can be kind of difficult to figure that out. I feel like the best way is to, if you are somebody that is in tune with your body, is just to or try to be more in tune with your body and figure out how your body feels, right? If you're feeling tired, if you're feeling really sore after a run, that kind of thing, that can really trigger and make you realize that you are missing something, right? Because, if you are bonking, as you call it, or like hitting a wall during a run, right, and you just feel like you can't go anymore, you may need more carbohydrates, right? If you're feeling sore to run, maybe you're not eating enough protein. So there are things that I think that we forget about, that we can figure out based on how your body feels. But that's also only something you can do. As somebody, as a coach, if you give me a diet recall and track everything we eat, maybe for a couple days, I can maybe able to assess and see where we are low in, or if we are low in anything, if you are meeting your needs, kind of thing. And I do believe most of us, I would say, like most of the clients that I do work with, are low on meeting their needs and haven't really quite been meeting those needs. But really, that's been related to not as much of not getting like enough carbs, protein, or fats. It's really just been off because of the calorie content. It's just a lot more than they realize. So that really is just a little bit of a struggle. But there's certainly things that we can do, that we can work, together, right, to figure that out, to get more calories. So there's your macronutrients and calories, but I also wanted to talk about micronutrients. So your micronutrients, right, are any nutrients that do not provide calories, but they do provide processes or functions that are important for your body. And the ones I just want to quickly highlight, I won't take too long to highlight these things, are these ones, but there's just a couple of them that I want to highlight that are important. As somebody that's a plant-based endurance athlete, so it may be harder for you to get because you're plant-based, but it's also really, really important as an endurance athlete. So these are just a few things few micronutrients that I want to highlight. So iron is a big one. Iron's really important because that iron helps to transport your oxygen throughout your body, right? So that's really important. It's found in our blood, right? So if you have done blood work before, or maybe you've gone and gave blood before, right, they always test your iron. So when your iron is low, you really might feel, you really just feel tired, fatigued a lot, which I know can be symptoms of other things too, like your thyroid, imbalance, things like that. But if you're feeling really fatigued, you may not be getting enough iron. So what are plant-based sources of getting more iron? So lentils, beans, tofu, sunflower seeds, dark leafy greens. Those are just some examples of getting more iron in your diet as somebody that's plant-based endurance athlete. The other one I want to highlight real quick is calcium and vitamin D. This is also very important for your bones. So I believe the injury that I have, or what it sounds like from professionals that I've been working with, is it's more tendon related than bone related. At first we thought it may be bone related, and it still could possibly be. But it sounds like, looking at the x-ray, there's not really much bone, or it doesn't look like there's any like bone stress fracture or anything. But of course, for your bones, especially as a runner, we are pounding on our bones and our joints, right? It's probably the worst thing about running, as much as I don't want to say that it's bad for us, because I do think that what's the negative things that come from running totally doesn't outweigh the benefits of running, right? I have to say that, because I do think there are more benefits that outweigh negatives, but we do have to listen to our bodies. And I'm really learning that, to really listen to my body and understand how much it can do. And that's really important, right? Because first, I want to be healthy, right? I want to be healthy. I first went plant-based and went vegetarian at first because I wanted to be healthier, right? It wasn't really for the performance gains or for running or anything. But I found that I was running into more challenges because I realized by changing my diet like this, I needed to really be more conscious of making sure I have the nutrients that my body needs. So calcium can be more difficult if you do not eat dairy, right? But there are plant-based foods that have calcium in them: leafy greens, beans, oat milk, which I'm going to talk more about oat milk, but that also is a good source of calcium. I believe there's not much calcium in almond milk. I believe it does have some, but not a lot. So it's not really the best source. Yeah, so your leafy greens, your beans are going to have some calcium in them. I don't find my clients that I've worked with struggling to get the calcium. So there's calcium in foods. I mean, certainly it depends on how much food that you eat. And then vitamin D can be a little bit harder because we really only get it from the sun, and then as a plant-based runner, mushrooms if they're treated with UV radiation. So there may be foods that are fortified with vitamin D, because I don't believe I've seen this as an issue either. Getting vitamin D with any of my clients. So that's good. And then vitamin B12 is the other one that I just want to mention. It's also really important to make sure that you get in your diet, is vitamin B12, and it's harder to get as someone that's plant-based, but especially is important for an endurance athlete, to make sure that you're getting vitamin B12. So nutritional yeast is a great source, so you can spread that on everything, and that's really what I do, is I sprinkle it. It's like yellow flakes if you've never had nutritional yeast, and I sprinkle it on everything. And you can take a supplement. That's always an option. A vitamin D supplement. You can also do iron supplements. You can take an iron supplement, but they can cause GI issues, constipation, that kind of stuff. So there are negatives to taking iron supplements. And then also with vitamin B12, I do want to mention oat milk, because I feel like nobody really talks about this, and it was actually something I discovered working with a client, that oat milk has a lot of vitamin B12. And we discovered that my client decided that maybe we shouldn't be taking the supplement every day, because he was actually getting more vitamin B12 in his diet than he actually thought he was. So that's pretty cool. So I wanted to mention that. And I think that's really everything I wanted to cover tonight. So that was a lot of information. So does anyone that's on, do you have any questions for me about anything that I just discussed? No. Okay. Okay, cool. So I know that was a lot. If you are still on, thank you for joining. I really do appreciate it, and staying on. Just to recap, just to conclude this video, but really, yes, we can talk later, Ryan. Sure, of course. Just to recap, but really I think the main point of why I wanted to talk about this video is that if you are somebody that eats a lot more plant-based, you may not even know that you may be missing nutrients, or could be feeling better, performing better in your races if that's important to you, and your health. So I just really wanted to explain that, because there are little changes we can tweak to help you to still, eat healthy, because that, maybe that's your main purpose of being plant-based, right? But we may need to tweak a little bit of things as an endurance athlete if performance is important for you. So I really just want to talk about that, because I think it's important, and also, understanding, calculations and tracking a little bit better, because I get questions like that a lot about that, but also, of course, that is that is what I'm here for, right? That is what I do for you. I make all those calculations. I figure out what are the nutrients that you need, and what's going to work best. What's the best approach that's going to work for you, for us to really make some simple changes, or figure out what we can do to make sure that you are getting the nutrients that you need. So I think that's it. Yeah, that's really it. So, yes, I hope this was helpful. I hope this was valuable to anybody that is watching. And again, if you're watching the replay, just comment below #replay. I am still taking on more one-on-one clients for my one-on-one coaching program, for nutrition coaching and run coaching. I will give you a discount if you would love to do both the run and nutrition coaching. I am offering that, so definitely let me know if you're interested in what I can offer and what I can do. Hopefully this video also helped explain a little bit about what I do with clients, because really explaining this, I think it really does talk about what I do to help, and really, knowing that, you may not even know until we look at things together. So that can be really helpful to just do together. So that is all I have for tonight. Again, I hope this was a valuable video, or you got some value out of this and information, and hopefully I'll talk to you guys all soon.